Welcome to the Atheist Witch Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast for witches or any curious minds to learn more about a non-theistic approach to witchcraft. Hello, and welcome back to the Atheist Witch Podcast, the show for curious minds and witches who explore the craft from a decidedly non-theistic, science-minded perspective. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a topic that's truly foundational to any solitary or self-dedicated practice, journaling and record keeping. This episode is about transforming the simple act of writing into a potent magical tool, discussing everything from shadow work and gratitude journals to mastering your book of shadows or grimoire. Hey, friends and listeners. Before we dive in today, I'd like to ask a favor. I have a poll attached to this episode on Spotify, and it would help me out if you'd take a look and leave a response. I love creating this content, and I want to make sure that the podcast continues to be a valuable use of your time and attention. Before we dive into the main topic, let's talk about what's going on in my own practice lately. You know, I just wrapped up an unexpectedly intense few weeks between work stresses and making a really big decision about the next chapter of my life. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, I've been leaning heavily on practices focused on clarity and integration. My favorite tool for this has just been sitting down and writing, and right now I'm cycling between three main journals. The first one is my brain dump. This is where the initial storm of emotion gets written down. No filters, no judgment, just getting down the anger, sadness, or the sheer cognitive clutter out of my brain onto the page. This is just raw, unprocessed material. Second is the shadow work journal. Once those emotions have been vented, I'm looking for patterns. Why did this particular situation trigger me so strongly? What old fears or limiting beliefs did it drag up? It's a purposeful, analytical step to confront the uncomfortable truths and stop projecting them into the world. And the third is my grimoire. This is the calm and scientific record. I use it to record spells and rituals. I'll write down the intention, tools, astrological timing, whatever I need to keep track, and crucially, the results. The structured approach helps me track efficacy, and it reinforces the boundary between psychological action and magical thinking. So the focused, self-directed act of putting my inner world into written form is helping me transform chaos into understanding and ultimately back into personal power. Let's talk about why record keeping is your most potent tool. The idea of keeping a magical journal, often called a book of shadows or a grimoire, is ubiquitous in witchcraft. But for the atheist witch, this isn't about recording divine revelations or following ancient dogma. It's about being a self-experimenter and a scientist of your own mind. In the Science and Witchcraft episodes, we talked about neuroplasticity and the power of conscious intention to rewire your brain. Your journal is a literal and literary mechanism for this rewiring. It serves several vital and non-supernatural functions. It can act as a conduit to your subconscious. Writing allows your implicit memories, suppressed thoughts, and fears to surface, offering invaluable material for self-reflection and growth. Studies have shown that expressive writing can lead to significant insights, reduce stress, and improved mental well-being by helping individuals confront and organize thoughts and emotions that may not be fully conscious. It's vital for reinforcing neuroplasticity. The act of writing, especially repetitive affirmations or detailed logs of intentional actions, solidifies new neural pathways, turning fleeting intentions into lasting habits. Writing engages the brain more deeply than just thinking. It requires motor skills, visual processing, and the translation of abstract thought into concrete language. And this is how you track your personal power. We've talked about this before. You are your power source. So your journal tracks how you effectively or ineffectively generate and direct that energy, teaching you what truly empowers your specific psychology. This is the core principle of behavioral tracking used in many therapeutic modalities, most notably cognitive behavioral therapy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, a journal is often used to log thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and their consequences. And by reviewing the log, a person can identify patterns, triggers, and cognitive distortions. What about your writing tools? When you first get a new journal or choose a special pen, you can elevate it from a simple object to a powerful tool for self-discovery and intentional focus with a short dedication ritual. This is all about charging the object with your intent and creating a strong psychological anchor. As always, feel free to adjust this spell to suit your personal practice. You will need your new journal or pen, and you will need a cleansing, grounding scent like lavender or sage. You can use incense or oils, whatever works for you. I'll be using both. I'll use the incense for cleansing and the oil to anoint the object. You can also use a candle and just plain water. First, you'll want to ground and center. Sit quietly, take 3 deep breaths. Focus on the feeling of your body against the chair and your feet on the floor. Go ahead and light your incense if you're using it. Next, you'll cleanse your object. Pass the journal or pen through the smoke of the incense. And as you do, visualize that smoke carrying away any energy that does not serve you. If you can't or you don't want to use incense, you can pass the object carefully over the flame of a white candle instead. Next, you'll anoint and charge the object. Take the grounding oil and rub a teeny tiny amount into the spine and corners of the journal or along the body of the pen. And as you do this, state your intention aloud, focusing on the purpose of the tool. For a new book of shadows, you might say, I charge this book to be a vessel of truth, a record of my learning, and a guide to my inner wisdom. For a pen, you might say, I charge this pen to bring clarity and honesty to every word I write. And if you can't or you don't want to use the oil, you can use plain water, maybe with a little bit of salt in it. Next, visualize your intent for the object. Hold the journal or pen between your hands, close your eyes, and visualize that bright, clear light, the energy of your focus and your conscious intention pouring from your hands into the object. And feel that physical object become a powerful extension of your mind. If applicable, you can open the journal and write your dedication on the first clean page. It could be something like, I dedicate this book to the pursuit of self-knowledge and mastery. It shall contain my honest truth, my focused observation, and the record of my personal power. Next, you can spend a quiet moment allowing your energy to settle and find some gratitude for yourself for doing this very intentional work. And if you feel compelled, you can immediately write your first entry. This simple ritual will lock your focused intent into the physical tool, making it a stronger anchor for your practice every time you use it. Witchy record keeping is never one size fits all. It can and should adapt to your needs. Here are a few essential types, and each serves a distinct psychological purpose. To help you get started in each of these, I'll also provide a few prompts you can use to immediately dive into the deep end of your analysis. First is the dream journal. As we talked about before, dream work is powerful because dreams are your brain's way of reprocessing information, consolidating memories, and offering a safe space to process otherwise overwhelming concepts. The notion here is simple. You forget the majority of your dreams within moments of waking up. So, keep a notepad or a working journal right at your bedside. Don't worry about beautiful prose. Just write down keywords, colors, images, and feelings immediately upon waking. You could try using a small flashlight with a red filter to help you write, but without fully waking up your brain. For extra depth, leave a question in your journal before you sleep, perhaps asking your subconscious to address that in your dreams. The atheist witch insight here is to analyze the symbols not for prophetic meaning, but for their psychological insight. Your dreams aren't divine messages, they're messages from your deepest self. For instance, a recurring dream of being chased might signal that you're consciously running from a difficult truth or a decision in your waking life. Some journal prompts for dream work could be, what dominant emotion did I feel during the dream, and where have I felt that emotion in my waking life this past week? Or identify 3 core symbols like a key, a forest, and a specific person. What does each symbol represent to me and my personal history? Or if this dream were a piece of advice from my wiser self, what would it be telling me to address today? The second type of journal that I'll talk about today is the gratitude journal. This is probably the simplest form of positive manifestation. The purpose of this journal is to dedicate a few minutes each day to listing things that you're genuinely grateful for. It could be a physical comfort, a positive relationship, or a successful small action that you took. And to deepen this practice, try listing things that are not just things, but focus on those actions that you took. For example, instead of "I'm grateful for my comfortable chair," write down, "I'm grateful that I took the time today to sit down and rest in my comfortable chair." This will emphasize your own agency in creating those moments of well-being. The atheist witch insight here is that gratitude is a proactive tool. It shifts your brain's selective attention towards positive patterns and away from negativity, reinforcing those neural pathways for joy and contentment. You're intentionally training your own perception to recognize and celebrate the abundance that you already possess. Some journal prompts for gratitude could be, name 3 actions that you took today that contributed positively to your own well-being or environment. Or, what is one small mundane moment I might have overlooked today that brought me peace? How can I consciously create more of the feeling I experienced today when whatever event happened that made me grateful? Next up, we'll talk about the shadow work journal. This is where the most difficult but most rewarding work happens. It's about facing the parts of yourself that you try to suppress. Note that shadow work is in itself a huge topic, and I'm just scratching the surface here for the purposes of today's episode. The purpose of the shadow work journal is to document intense reactions and noting how you feel about them as a way to process fully before moving on, and then to observe those patterns and attempt at rewiring those negative associations. I suggest using a 3 pencils technique. You could use 1 color pen to write down an initial trigger or fear, a second color to write the harsh, critical inner voice that you hear, and then use a 3rd color to take a moment and write a rational, compassionate response. Write it as if you are writing to your best friend or another loved one. This will help externalize that inner dialogue and introduce the neutral observer, you, your conscious self. The atheist witch insight with the shadow work journal is that this is self-directed therapy that will be aimed at rewiring negative associations within your implicit memory. It's the highest form of self-care, consciously transforming your emotional vulnerabilities into wisdom and resilience. When you're reflecting, some journal prompts you could use in a shadow work journal are, what is the one limiting belief about myself that, if proven false, would allow me to achieve my biggest goal? Or describe a recent situation where I overreacted. What was the core fear underneath the anger or the defensiveness? If my shadow side had a voice, what is the most important, difficult truth it would want me to acknowledge right now? The 4th journal I'll talk about today is the daily practice journal or log. This is a straightforward calendar-style log that's designed for tracking mundane and magical habits. The purpose here is to every day log the date and then simply record the weather, your mood, what you read or learned about witchcraft that day, any intentional action you took, a 5-minute meditation, stirring intention into your coffee, pulling a single tarot card, and then a 1-sentence observation about your energy levels that day. And over time, the log creates a massive data set that shows correlations in your daily practice. And the atheist witch insight here is the power of data analysis. The log helps you cut through magical thinking by showing you what activities truly lead to better focus, higher energy, or clearer insight in your unique life. Let's talk about how to keep notes on your practice. Taking good notes, as you've heard from me many times, is the difference between casting a spell once and building a working, repeatable self-transformation process. I call this the scientific method of magic. Some practical advice for note-taking. You'll want to capture the before and after. Every log entry must include 2 states. What was the initial state? What was the problem? How did you feel? What did you need? And then what was the observed result? What happened over the next week or 2? Did the problem change? Did my behavior shift? Don't just note the outcome, note the timeline of the outcome if you can. Next, make sure you're creating the control variable, or the baseline. It's tricky, but it can be very helpful in structuring your practice. To truly determine if your ritual action, as in lighting the candle or anointing a sigil, had an impact beyond your intention, try logging a similar situation where you only perform the mental act, which is the intention or the visualization, but skip the physical ritual. Comparing those 2 logs can help you isolate the psychological impact of the action itself, separating ritual from pure placebo effect. Also, you want to flag the feeling. Don't record just what you did, record how you felt while doing it. Use a rating scale of 1 to 10 for focus, emotional intensity, or physical energy during a ritual. A spell performed when you felt at a 10 for focus will probably have a more profound psychological impact than one performed at a 3. Your journal is documenting the effectiveness of your internal state, not external forces. And here's a pro tip: index every page. If you're using a physical journal, add page numbers and keep a running index at the front. You will be so grateful later when you want to quickly find that one banishing ritual with the black salt or that moon phase correspondence for financial growth. And if your index gets full, make the very last entry the page number for the next index. It's okay to have it in the middle of the book as long as you keep an index. Another tip is to use diagrams. Don't limit yourself to just text. Draw a quick diagram of your ritual space, where you placed the candle, where you sat, and where you directed your energy. That visual memory can help reinforce the ritual structure in your mind for future use. Whether you call it a book of shadows, a grimoire, or, a giant post-bound volume like me, the book is the culmination of your wisdom. While they're often used interchangeably, usually the Book of Shadows is the personal, ritual-focused, and experiential log, and grimoire is the collected knowledge, research, and correspondences. I tend to use these backwards for myself, but for today I will stick to the more common usage and definition. So the grimoire, you can think of that as your reference manual for your mind. It will contain the data and the tools that you have deemed most effective, like your custom correspondences. Don't just copy down a book that says rosemary is for protection. Use your own experience so that your grimoire could say, rosemary, the smell reminds me of my grandmother's garden, which creates a feeling of safety and grounding. Therefore, I use rosemary when I need a focus anchor for emotional protection. That's a working manual for your brain's associations. You'll want to include your study and research. This is where you put down those deep dives. If you read a fascinating article on the science of the placebo effect or the neurobiology of meditation, you can summarize the key points and record how they apply to your concept of raising energy or working magic. This is how you integrate your worldview into your practice. You'll want to keep a record of any personal sigils or symbols that you create. Log the intention statement that you use to create a sigil, and mark its date of creation. This will preserve the focused intent and ensure that that symbol can retain its psychological power as a focus tool. Pro tip here, write that down before you actually do your sigil ritual, because in some cases you want to try to forget the sigil and stop thinking about it. So you want to write that down before you really try to cast it out of your mind, and make sure that you grab that record while you still can. Quick tip on structuring your grimoire: use a binder if you want to. If you're like me and you're overwhelmed by permanence, use the binder to allow you to print out articles, move things around, add and reorganize different sections as your understanding evolves. This flexibility can mirror the non-dogmatic, always learning nature of atheist witchcraft. If you're like me, you may want a section on kitchen witchery or an herb log. You could dedicate a section on how different ingredients affect you, or record not just the magical correspondence of an herb, but its physical effect. Chamomile causes physical relaxation, and it's excellent for pre-sleep meditation. This connects the physical reality of the plant to the psychological outcome that you're seeking. I know I've mentioned this before, and you might be wondering about a digital versus physical grimoire. I've used both, and I've landed on a hybrid method. And as always, I encourage you to find out whatever works for you. Physical journals are wonderful for spontaneous emotional work like dream work or shadow work, and the act of handwriting can help solidify memory and emotion. But a digital grimoire, like in Notion or Evernote or even just Google Docs, is perfect for hoarding and organizing vast amounts of information and making it searchable and indexable. You could include correspondences, research on neuroscience or theoretical physics, or a clean log of old spells that you can easily reference or rearrange. Remember, no matter the method, the most important rule is to just take notes. That practice and meticulous observation is the science behind the magic. Journaling and keeping records in your practice isn't homework, it's empowerment. It's the ultimate tool for turning inward, understanding your own marvelous mind, and deliberately engineering the life that you desire. What part of your inner world are you ready to document and transform? Maybe you're like me and you're tracking the integration of a major shift in your life, or maybe you're just logging your first successful coffee meditation. Whatever your journey, remember that the journal is your own scientific lab notebook. Until next time, stay curious, keep asking questions, and keep making your own magic.